The night air inside the mansion was calm, but Genevieve's heart raced as she hurried toward Benjamin. Her steps were soft, careful not to draw attention. When she reached him, her voice came out trembling. "Sir, please, don't eat that meal." Benjamin froze, his fork hovering midair. Confusion filled his face. "What do you mean, Genevieve?" Tears gathered in her eyes. "Please believe me, sir. Madam has been adding something harmful to your food. She and Master Kaiser are planning to hurt you. I overheard them speaking when they thought they were alone." Benjamin's breath caught. The fork slipped slightly from his grasp. "You must be mistaken," he murmured weakly, disbelief clouding his voice. Genevieve shook her head, her tone desperate yet firm. "No, sir. I could never lie about something like this. Please, don't eat, and install cameras in the house. You'll see it yourself. Don't take only my word. Watch with your own eyes." Benjamin stared at her, shock rippling through him. This woman had served him for years, loyal and humble. The thought that his wife, the woman he cherished, might betray him made his chest tighten painfully. He wanted to deny it, to call it nonsense. Yet, there was something in Genevieve's eyes, a fear so real it pierced his doubt. Slowly, he set the fork down. Without another word, Genevieve took the plate and rushed to the kitchen. She switched it with the one she had secretly prepared earlier, identical in appearance, untouched by poison. By the time she returned, footsteps echoed from the stairs. Eberechi entered, her voice soft and sugary. "I hope you're enjoying dinner, my love," she said, sitting opposite him. Her gaze gleamed with hidden pleasure as Benjamin raised his fork again. He smiled faintly. "Yes, it's delicious." He chewed slowly, each bite tasting like ashes in his mouth. Deep down, his heart broke apart. He wanted to believe Genevieve was mistaken, but dread had already wrapped around his soul. What happens when the people you love most become your enemies? Would Benjamin survive their treachery? Benjamin's life, to the world, looked perfect. Young, handsome, and wealthy, he had everything. But what made him admired wasn't his riches, it was his heart. He treated everyone with grace and respect, from his top managers to the gatekeepers. His employees adored him. If one of them fell ill, Benjamin quietly covered their medical bills. If another lost a loved one, he sent help, and often attended the funeral himself. To him, money was a tool for kindness, not pride. Outside business, he gave to widows, orphans, and strangers. People called him a blessing. At home, he was no different. Genevieve often thought there was no man like him. In all her years as a maid, she had never seen such gentleness. In other homes, she had been shouted at, slapped, insulted. But here, Benjamin treated her as human. Whenever she worked too hard, he would say kindly, "Genevieve, you've done enough today. Go rest." Those words lived rent-free in her heart. She had no family in the city. The mansion was her entire world, and Benjamin, the one who made it feel like home. Then there was Eberechi, Benjamin's wife. Beauty radiated from her. Wherever she went, heads turned. People whispered, "Benjamin is lucky to have her." But inside, Eberechi was restless. She had luxury, admiration, and comfort, yet she wanted more. More thrill, more control, more life. Benjamin's steady love, once charming, now felt dull. He adored her completely, too completely, and that made her heart wander. He often told his friends, "Eberechi is my crown. I couldn't ask for a better wife." One of those friends was Kaiser, Benjamin's childhood companion. They had grown up together in hardship, brothers in everything but blood. But time had changed them. Benjamin had risen high, Kaiser had not. Benjamin had lifted him countless times, gave him business deals, even bought him a car. Whenever he introduced him, he said proudly, "This is my brother, Kaiser. We've been together since we were boys." To outsiders, Kaiser looked loyal, grateful. He laughed with Benjamin, toasted with him, played the perfect friend. But in his heart, envy burned. Every visit to Benjamin's mansion was a stab of jealousy, the grand home, the fine suits, the adoring wife. And that wife, Eberechi, wasn't just his friend's woman. To him, she was the ultimate prize. When she walked by, her perfume lingered long after, and his eyes followed her longer than they should. Envy, like flame, cannot stay hidden forever. One evening, Benjamin invited friends over for dinner. Laughter filled the mansion. He moved from guest to guest, ensuring everyone was comfortable. Genevieve glided silently through the crowd, serving food. Eberechi sat beside her husband, smiling for appearances. But her eyes told another story, one of quiet dissatisfaction. She watched how people praised Benjamin, and sighed inwardly. He's too good. Too perfect. Too predictable. Across the room, Kaiser watched her. When Benjamin turned his back, Kaiser's gaze lingered on her face. The desire was clear. Benjamin saw none of it. To him, life was bliss, an adoring wife, a loyal maid, and a devoted friend. But beneath the laughter, something dark had begun to grow. In Kaiser's heart, the seed of betrayal had already taken root. The day came when Benjamin had to travel for business. He kissed Eberechi goodbye. "Take care of yourself, my queen," he said, smiling warmly. "If you need anything, call me. You know I'll always provide." She smiled back, hollow inside. His words felt empty now. The sooner he left, the better. When he was gone, silence filled the house. Genevieve continued her duties, sweeping and polishing as usual. But the brightness of the home dimmed in his absence. That evening, there was a knock at the gate. It was Kaiser, grinning, holding a bottle of wine. "Ebery," he said casually. "Benjamin's away, so I thought I'd come check on you. You know, just to keep you company." Eberechi hesitated, then let him in. She liked the ease in his tone, the daring sparkle in his eyes. They sat together in the living room. Kaiser made her laugh with playful jokes, his compliments flowing freely. "Eberechi," he murmured, leaning closer, "you're the most beautiful woman I've ever met. Sometimes I wonder how Benjamin won a gem like you." She blushed, pretending to scold him, but deep down she basked in it. No one had made her feel seen in a long time. As they laughed, Genevieve passed by carrying a tray. She noticed their closeness, paused slightly, then bowed and continued silently. Later, Kaiser pretended to leave, only to return moments later. "My car won't start," he said, faking worry. "It's late. Can I crash here for the night?" "Just the couch." Eberechi hesitated. Then nodded. "Fine, take the guest room." The house fell quiet. In her small room, Genevieve couldn't sleep. Something about the way Kaiser looked at Madame haunted her. She prayed silently that nothing foolish would happen. But she was wronged. At midnight, when the mansion slept in silence, Kaiser rose from the guest room. His movements were cautious but deliberate. The corridor was dimly lit, shadows dancing on the walls. He stopped at Eberechi's door and knocked softly, once, twice, then opened it without waiting for her response. Eberechi was awake, lying still beneath her sheets. When she saw him, she sat up quickly. "What are you doing here?" she whispered in alarm. Kaiser's lips curved into a sly smile. "You know why I'm here," he murmured, stepping closer. "Stop pretending, Eberechi. I've seen the way you look at me. You're lonely, and I can end that." Her heart pounded. She wanted to tell him to leave, but her breath caught halfway. His voice, smooth and daring, filled the room. He reached for her hand, whispered sweet, forbidden words, and her resistance shattered like glass. That night, betrayal was born. In the small servants' quarters, Genevieve stirred in her sleep. A faint sound reached her ears, the creak of a bed, muffled laughter, hushed voices. She froze, her stomach tightening with dread. Tears filled her eyes as realization struck. No. Madam can't be doing this. She turned to face the wall, covering her head with the blanket, but the sound still reached her. Benjamin's love for his wife flashed through her mind, and the ache in her chest grew unbearable. He doesn't deserve this, she whispered into the dark. The next morning, the house carried a strange stillness. Kaiser lounged on the couch like he owned the place. "Genevieve," he said lazily, "bring me water. Then, as she set the glass down, and clean my shoes while you're at it." She obeyed quietly, though her blood boiled. Eberechi walked through the hall with a soft smile, acting as though nothing had happened. But whenever their eyes met, an unspoken fire passed between her and Kaiser. Days went by, and he never left. Each evening brought more excuses, a flat tire, bad weather, late meetings. Soon, his visits became routine. He laughed with Eberechi in the open, teased her in the kitchen, and walked through the mansion as though it belonged to him. Genevieve said nothing. Her eyes saw everything, but her lips stayed sealed. Still, every night she knelt beside her small bed and prayed, "God, please, let Master come home soon. Let this end before it destroys him." But even she feared what his return might bring. Weeks slipped past. Whenever Benjamin traveled, Kaiser returned. At first, he claimed to check on Eberechi, for Benjamin's sake. But soon, the lie was unnecessary. The truth had become their secret world, shared laughter, stolen touches, whispered meetings under the cover of night. Meanwhile, Benjamin continued being the devoted husband. From every city he visited, he called. "My queen, are you okay? Do you need anything?" His voice always carried warmth. "Yes, everything's fine," she would reply sweetly, twirling her hair as she lied through her teeth. He sent her flowers, jewelry, and messages of love, each one landing on a heart that no longer cared. What had once been affection now felt like a chain. She longed instead for danger, the thrill Kaiser brought with every smirk and every reckless word. Genevieve watched this silent tragedy unfold day by day. She saw how Madame glowed when Kaiser arrived, how her laughter came too easily. It pierced her heart, but she could do nothing. One afternoon, as Genevieve carried a basket of laundry through the corridor, she heard voices in the dining room. She stopped. "We can't go on like this," Eberechi said softly. "He'll find out one day." "Not if we end it before he does," Kaiser replied. His tone was dark but confident. Genevieve froze. She pressed her back against the wall, clutching the basket tightly. Eberechi's voice trembled. "What are you saying?" Kaiser leaned closer, his words dripping like poison. "As long as Benjamin lives, we can never truly be free. He's the wall between us and everything we want." "But he's my husband," she whispered. "Husband?" Kaiser scoffed. "A husband who's never around. A man who gives his heart to everyone but you. Tell me, Eberechi, does that sound like love?" Her eyes fell. His words stung. She thought of the lonely nights, the times Benjamin left her behind for work, and the envy she felt whenever he gave to others. Slowly, her resistance melted away. "Then, what do you want me to do?" Kaiser smiled coldly. From his pocket, he pulled out a small container. Inside was fine white powder. "This," he said, setting it before her, "is the key to our freedom. Ground glass. Add a pinch to his food each day. His organs will fail slowly. It will look like sickness, no one will suspect you." Eberechi's hands shook as she held it. "Are you sure?" Kaiser nodded, gripping her chin. "Trust me. Do this, and soon Benjamin will be gone. The house, the money, the estates, all ours. And then, I'll take you away. We'll start over, far from here." Eberechi stared at the powder, then slowly smiled. Yes, maybe this is the only way. From the corridor, Genevieve's body went rigid. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Ground glass. Her vision blurred as she realized the horror of what she had just overheard. Her mistress was planning to kill the kindest man she'd ever known. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to run in and scream the truth, but fear rooted her to the spot. She was only a maid. What if they silenced her too? She stumbled back to her room, dropped the laundry onto the floor, and sat on the bed trembling. Her thoughts raced in circles. If I keep quiet, Master may die. If I speak, they might kill me instead. What do I do? That night, she didn't sleep. Her mind replayed Benjamin's kindness again and again, the man who once paid her sick brother's hospital bills without hesitation, who spoke to her with dignity when others treated her like dirt. I can't let him die like this, she whispered, her tears soaking the pillow. I must protect him somehow. By morning, her decision was made. When Benjamin returned from his business trip, his smile was as warm as ever. He hugged Eberechi, kissed her forehead, and handed her a small box. Inside was a diamond necklace that sparkled like captured sunlight. For you, my queen, he said softly. Eberechi gasped, pretending delight. Oh, Benjamin, it's beautiful, she said, kissing him lightly, though her mind drifted toward the container hidden deep in her drawer. That evening, she decided to act. In the kitchen, she hummed sweetly while preparing his favorite meal. When no one was watching, she opened the small container and sprinkled the powder into his food. Stirring carefully, she smiled to herself. Soon, my new life begins. Genevieve stood silently at the doorway, her hands trembling, her heart heavy. She had seen everything. As Benjamin sat at the dining table, she watched with horror as Eberechi placed the poisoned plate before him. Every instinct screamed inside her. Do something. But she couldn't, not yet. The house felt colder that night. A deadly secret now sat on the table, disguised as love. The evening felt heavier than usual. The lamps glowed softly across the dining room as Benjamin took his seat. Eberechi stood beside him, her smile as polished as her pearls. Your favorite tonight, she said sweetly. Her voice was calm, but in her eyes, danger hid behind affection. Benjamin smiled and reached for his fork. You always take such care, he replied. Of course, she whispered. You deserve the best. Her words tasted like poison before the food even touched his lips. She turned to answer a phone call and walked upstairs, her heels clicking lightly on the marble floor. The moment she disappeared, Genevieve stepped out from behind the corner where she'd been pretending to arrange the flowers. Her pulse thundered. She could no longer stay silent. She rushed to Benjamin's side and whispered, Sir, please don't eat that meal. Benjamin looked up in confusion. Genevieve? What is this again? Tears glistened in her eyes. Sir, I swear by everything, Madam is poisoning you. I heard her and Master Kaiser plotting it. They mean to take your life. Please, don't eat. His hand trembled slightly as he set the fork down. You can't be serious, he said, barely breathing. Please, sir, she begged. Put cameras in this house. Don't just believe me, see it with your own eyes. Benjamin stared at her, torn between disbelief and dread. She had served him faithfully for years, never once giving reason to doubt her. Yet the thought that his wife, his own flesh and heart, could wish him dead, it was unbearable. But something in Genevieve's voice, the raw fear, the urgency, made him pause. He slowly pushed the plate aside. Genevieve quickly carried it away and returned moments later with another, one she had secretly made earlier, identical in every way but pure. Just as she placed it down, Eberechi's footsteps echoed from above. She appeared at the doorway, smiling sweetly. I hope the food tastes good, my love, she said, taking her seat opposite him. Benjamin forced a smile. "It's wonderful," he said, pretending to eat as his heart pounded painfully. Inside, everything in him screamed. He wanted to believe Genevieve was wrong, but deep down, the first crack of truth had begun to show. That night, long after Eberechi had gone to bed, Benjamin sat alone in his study. The lights burned low. He barely blinked as Genevieve entered quietly. "Sir," she said softly. "Have you thought about what I said?" Benjamin's face looked drawn, heavy with thought. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we will install cameras." And he did. Hidden cameras found their way into the kitchen, dining room, and hallways. Only Benjamin and Genevieve knew. Days later, he returned home from work to find Eberechi smiling warmly at the door. "I made your favorite dish again," she said sweetly, her tone full of false care. In the kitchen earlier, she had opened that same cursed container, sprinkling its contents carefully into the food. As she stirred, she hummed, certain victory was near. But Genevieve had been watching, silent, unseen. When Eberechi stepped away to fetch something, Genevieve slipped in swiftly, replaced the plate, and vanished again. By the time Benjamin sat at the table, the trap was set, not for him, but for her. Eberechi sat across from him, eyes bright with secret delight. "Eat, my love," she said gently. Benjamin smiled faintly, his pulse hammering. He lifted the fork and ate slowly, pretending calm. Each bite was an act of silent strength. Genevieve stood in the corner, feigning to tidy the table, never taking her eyes off him. When he finished, he rose, kissed his wife on the cheek, and thanked her with quiet grace. Then he excused himself and went to his study. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Genevieve joined him. Benjamin turned on the monitor. The video played, the kitchen, the wife, the powder, the slow stirring. The truth unfolded before him like a nightmare. His chest heaved. His hands trembled. "This can't be," he whispered hoarsely. But it was there. The woman he loved was plotting his death. Genevieve said nothing. She stood beside him, her eyes full of pity. Gently, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, sir," she whispered. Benjamin closed his eyes. His world, once built on love, loyalty, and trust, crumbled in silence. In the days that followed, the house felt haunted. Benjamin avoided confrontation. He needed proof so solid that not even a single lie could twist it. So he stayed quiet. Watched. Waited. That night, Genevieve found him staring into space. "Sir," she asked softly, "what will you do now?" He drew a long breath. "We'll let them think their plan is working. I'll pretend to fall sick. We'll see how far they go." Genevieve nodded, her heart aching for him. "Then I'll help you." The next morning, Benjamin appeared weak and pale. Genevieve dusted a light powder on his skin to give him the look of exhaustion and dabbed oil on his forehead to mimic sweat. When Eberechi came downstairs, she gasped in false concern. "My love, you don't look well," she said, touching his arm. Benjamin coughed softly. "I don't know what's happening. I feel tired." She smiled inwardly. The poison was working, or so she thought. What she didn't know was that Genevieve had swapped every meal. Benjamin was perfectly fine, but his wife believed she was watching him die. Days turned into weeks. Benjamin grew weaker. He stayed in bed, coughing, acting faint. Genevieve played her part, bringing trays of food and water while discarding anything the mistress prepared. Eberechi's joy grew quietly. Her mask of compassion never slipped, not even as she wiped his forehead or kissed his cheek. "You'll get better soon, my love," she whispered sweetly, hiding her delight behind a careful smile. When she was with Kaiser, the truth came out. One evening, Genevieve passed the back garden and froze. Laughter floated through the air. She peered around the hedge and saw them together. "I told you it would work," Kaiser said proudly. Look at him now, weak, coughing, almost gone. Eberechi laughed softly. Soon, Kaiser. Our dream will be real. Genevieve gripped the wall, fighting tears. The man who had once been their blessing was now the center of their cruelty. Inside, Benjamin lay in bed pretending to sleep. When Eberechi entered, she sat beside him, stroking his hand. How are you, my love? She asked softly. Benjamin coughed weakly. Still, not well. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Sometimes, she said coldly, I wish you would just go. Then I could finally live. His heart shattered. Hearing it confirmed what the cameras had already shown. He kept his eyes closed, but inside, something in him broke forever. When she left, Genevieve entered quietly. One look at his face told her everything. She said it, didn't she? She whispered. Benjamin nodded slowly. She wishes me dead. His voice cracked. The woman I loved with all my soul, wants me gone. Genevieve placed her trembling hand over his. Sir, please stay strong. We're not done yet. He inhaled deeply, his eyes filling with resolve. You're right. I'll see how far they're willing to go. Then, when the time is right, they'll face justice. He looked toward the door, his expression cold but calm. They think I'm dying. But they have no idea, I'm watching. The mansion seemed calm from the outside, but beneath its walls, Benjamin's quiet storm brewed. He had seen enough. The woman he cherished and the man he trusted most had joined hands to destroy him. But he couldn't move too soon. If he confronted them without proof strong enough to shatter every lie, they would escape unpunished. So, he planned. Late one night, when everyone was asleep, Benjamin sat in his study. His body looked frail and tired, but his mind burned with focus. Genevieve sat across from him, watching silently as he opened the hidden safe behind the bookshelf. These, he whispered, pulling out thick folders and stamped documents, are everything they want, my businesses, estates, and accounts. He took a deep breath, then pulled out a small metal briefcase from under the desk. Carefully, he placed the genuine papers inside and locked it tight. From another drawer, he removed a different stack, perfect replicas, expertly forged. He smiled grimly. These are the rewards they'll get. Nothing but empty promises. Genevieve watched him, her heart pounding. You're giving them fake ones. Benjamin nodded. Exactly. They think they're playing me, but the game's already mine. The next morning, Benjamin acted worse than ever. His voice was faint, his movements slow. He lay in bed coughing softly when Eberechi entered, her face painted with false concern. My love, she said tenderly, you mustn't think about work or stress. Just rest. He nodded weakly. You're right. In the safe, there are important documents. If something happens to me, keep them safe. Her eyes flickered with excitement, but she quickly hid it. Don't say such things, she whispered, kissing his forehead. Yet, her trembling hands betrayed her greed. That afternoon, when Benjamin pretended to nap, Eberechi slipped quietly into the study. Her heart raced as she turned the safe's dial. The click echoed through the silent room. When the door swung open, the forged papers lay neatly stacked inside, exactly as Benjamin had planned. She exhaled in relief and smiled triumphantly. At last, she murmured, stuffing them into her handbag. She called Kaiser immediately. It's done, she whispered. I have everything. Once Benjamin is gone, it will all be ours. Kaiser's laughter came through the line, proud and wicked. Perfect. I'll handle the buyer. We'll be rich, Eberechi. We'll vanish and start a new life together. That evening, when he arrived at the mansion, his grin was wide. He flipped through the forged files with greedy eyes. It's all here, he said, patting her hand. Soon, we'll leave this country as kings. She smiled softly, believing every word. But Kaiser's mind carried another secret. The next day, he arranged a private meeting with a foreign investor. He told Eberechi he would sell the documents and bring back the money. After tonight, he promised, everything will change. As he drove away, a cruel smile formed on his lips. Why share the fortune? He thought. I'll take the money and leave her behind like the fool she is. What he didn't know was that Benjamin had already seen this coming. The so-called buyer was no stranger, it was one of Benjamin's close allies, a businessman who owed him a great favor. When Benjamin had explained the situation days earlier, his friend agreed to play the role perfectly. That evening, Kaiser arrived at a quiet hotel lounge, clutching a black briefcase. He looked around nervously, then sat down. A few minutes later, the buyer joined him. Kaiser leaned forward, speaking in a low tone. These are Benjamin's company papers. Once you pay me, I'll vanish from this country tonight. Let his wife deal with the rest. The buyer gave a slight nod, then made a small gesture. Instantly, several plainclothes officers surrounded the table. Police, one of them shouted. Kaiser froze. His face drained of color as he stared at the badges flashing before his eyes. The buyer stood, pulling out his own identification. Kaiser, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. The room erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped. People gasped. Kaiser's mind spun, realizing it was all a trap. At the same moment, police cars screeched to a halt outside Benjamin's mansion. Neighbors peeked through their windows as officers entered through the gates. Inside, Eberechi was lounging on the sofa, sipping wine and smiling to herself, unaware her world was about to end. Mrs. Eberechi Benjamin, an officer said firmly. She turned, slightly startled but composed. Yes. What is this about? You are under arrest for attempted murder, theft, and conspiracy, he declared. She laughed sharply. What nonsense. Do you know who my husband is? The officer didn't flinch. Your partner, Kaiser, is already in custody. He confessed. We have all the evidence. Her face fell. Shock turned to rage. She screamed, fought, and tried to run, but it was useless. The handcuffs snapped shut around her wrists. By the next morning, the story was everywhere, on television, in newspapers, across social media. Wealthy man betrayed by wife and best friend. Murder plot exposed. Cameras flashed. Headlines screamed. The nation buzzed with disbelief. The day of judgment finally arrived. Benjamin sat quietly in the back of the police car, his expression calm but his heart heavy. Ahead of him, in another van, Eberechi and Kaiser sat pale and broken, their hands bound, their faces stripped of pride. Just weeks earlier, they had plotted his death. Now, they were headed to court to face justice. Crowds filled the streets. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. People who once admired Eberechi's beauty now spat her name like venom. And Kaiser, once known as Benjamin's faithful friend, was now cursed as a traitor. Benjamin walked past the flashing cameras without a word. On the surface, he looked strong, but inside, pain pressed down like a weight. The woman he had loved, the brother he had trusted, both had torn his soul apart. Inside the courtroom, silence fell heavy as stone. The two betrayers sat side by side at the defendant's table, but their alliance was gone. Eberechi avoided Kaiser's gaze, while his eyes burned cold with blame. The evidence was undeniable. Video footage showed Eberechi poisoning food. The forged documents, the recordings of Kaiser's secret deal, the confessions, it was all there. Benjamin sat through it all, silent and steady. Every piece of proof was another wound, but he refused to crumble. When the judge finally spoke, his words carried the force of thunder. Eberechi Benjamin, you are guilty of attempted murder. Kaiser, guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and betrayal of trust. You will face the full penalty of the law. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Eberechi broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Kaiser sat stiff, jaw clenched, hatred and regret mixing on his face. The truth was out. Their wickedness could no longer hide behind charm or lies. Outside the courthouse, chaos awaited. Reporters surrounded Benjamin the moment he stepped through the doors, cameras flashing like lightning. The crowd murmured his name, some out of pity, others in awe. For a second, he wanted to disappear, to escape the noise, the questions, the pity. But then Genevieve's words echoed in his mind, "Face the truth with courage, sir." He raised a hand for silence. His voice, calm but filled with pain, cut through the chatter. "I stand before you today," he said steadily, "not as a wealthy man, or a powerful one, but as a broken husband and a betrayed friend." The murmurs quieted. Every lens turned toward him. "The people I trusted most tried to destroy me," he continued, his voice tightening with emotion. "But I am alive today because of one person, not my wife, not my friend, but someone the world would least expect. My maid, Genevieve." A ripple moved through the crowd. Whispers filled the air. Benjamin's voice grew stronger. "When others plotted my death, she risked her life to save me. When betrayal surrounded me, she reminded me of truth and loyalty. For that, I will honor her all my days." At the edge of the crowd, Genevieve stood quietly, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes shimmering with tears. She had never sought recognition, yet now the world saw her for who she truly was. Applause broke out. Cameras turned toward her. People whispered her name with reverence, the brave maid who saved her master. For the first time, Genevieve was no longer invisible. She was celebrated, respected, seen. That evening, the mansion stood still again, bathed in the quiet gold of sunset. Genevieve packed her small bag, preparing to leave after her long shift, just as she always did. She moved quietly toward the door, not wanting to disturb the peace. But a gentle voice stopped her. "Genevieve." She turned, startled. Benjamin was standing in the hallway, his eyes tired but soft. "You were going to leave without saying good night?" he asked with a faint smile. She lowered her gaze respectfully. "I didn't want to disturb you, sir. You've had a long day." He stepped closer, his tone different now, gentler, more personal. "Genevieve. I don't know how to thank you. Not as a master would thank a maid, but as a man whose life you saved." Her breath caught. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. He went on, his voice sincere. "You showed me a loyalty I had never known. When everyone else betrayed me, you stood firm. I can't imagine this home without your presence anymore." Her throat tightened as she tried to smile. "It was only my duty, sir," she whispered. But her trembling voice betrayed the storm of emotions within her. Benjamin studied her for a long moment, then spoke softly. "No, Genevieve. It was more than duty. You gave me something real, something my wife never did. A heart I can trust." Her pulse quickened. She wanted to look away, but his gaze held her in place. The silence between them grew heavy, gentle, but full of meaning. He reached for her bag slowly. Their hands brushed. The contact was brief, yet powerful enough to make them both pause. Holding the bag lightly, he said, "I don't want to rebuild my life with lies, Genevieve. I want something true. And I see that in you." Tears welled in her eyes. She tried to speak, but only a whisper escaped. "Sir." He shook his head gently. "No titles tonight. Just Benjamin." The name lingered between them, fragile and human. "I promise you," he said softly, "whatever comes next, it will be built on honesty, not deceit. On loyalty, not betrayal." Her lips trembled into a smile, faint but genuine. For the first time in her life, someone looked at her not as a servant, but as a woman worthy of dignity, and perhaps, in time, love. That night didn't end with a kiss or a fairy tale embrace. It ended with something far deeper, hope. Two souls wounded by betrayal stood at the threshold of something new. The path ahead would not be easy, pain had scarred them both. But beneath the ruins of deceit, something honest was beginning to grow. From the ashes of treachery rose a bond pure and unshaken. Betrayal had destroyed one love, but it had also revealed another, stronger one, born of truth and courage. And as the night settled over the mansion, the once broken man and the humble maid found, at last, the quiet beginning of a new chapter. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt tales like this, stories of pain, courage, and redemption that remind us what true loyalty